Most men don't struggle because they're weak. They struggle because they were never taught where they end and where others begin. And because of that, people slowly take more from them than they ever intended to give. Not all at once, not aggressively, but piece by piece, until one day you realize you're exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from yourself. And the worst part? You don't even know when it started. Listen carefully, because this is where everything changes. Boundaries are not about controlling other people. They are about defining yourself. They are the invisible lines that protect your time, your energy, your emotional stability, and your self-respect. Without them, you don't have relationships. You have obligations. You have expectations placed on you that you never agreed to, but slowly accepted. And here's the truth most men never hear. If you don't set boundaries early, people will set them for you. Not because they're bad, but because humans naturally take what is available. If you always say yes, you will be asked for more. If you tolerate disrespect, it will be repeated. If you never express your limits, people will assume you don't have any. And that's how men lose control of their own lives without even realizing it. As a psychologist, I've seen this pattern over and over again. Men who are kind, loyal, and giving, becoming drained because they confuse being a good person with having no limits. But kindness without boundaries is not strength. It's self-neglect. Because every time you ignore what you feel, every time you say yes when you mean no, you send a message to yourself that your needs come second, that your comfort is negotiable, that your time is less valuable, and over time, that message becomes your reality. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Setting boundaries will change how people respond to you. Some will respect you more, some will test you, and some will quietly distance themselves. And that's exactly why most men avoid doing it. Because they're afraid of losing connection. But here's the truth that will set you free. Any connection that requires you to lose yourself is not a connection worth keeping. Read that again in your mind, because once you understand that, boundaries stop feeling like a risk. They start feeling like protection. Now, let me show you the first shift you need to make. You stop explaining yourself too much. One of the biggest mistakes men make when setting boundaries is over-justifying them. They feel the need to give long explanations, to make sure the other person understands, to soften the impact. But the more you explain, the more negotiable your boundary becomes. Because now it sounds like a discussion instead of a decision. Strong boundaries are simple. I can't do that. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. No anger, no aggression, no apology, just clarity. Because clarity is power, and people who are used to you being flexible will feel that shift immediately. Some may question it, some may push back. But here's what you need to understand. Pushback is not a sign that your boundary is wrong. It's a sign that your boundary is new, and anything new creates resistance. But if you stay consistent, something powerful happens. People begin adjusting to the version of you that no longer bends easily. And for the first time, you begin to feel something many men have never truly experienced. Respect, not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it, to yourself first. And that's where real boundaries begin. Not in what you say to others, but in what you finally decide for yourself. There is a moment when setting boundaries stops being uncomfortable and starts revealing the truth about the people around you. Because the second you stop overextending yourself, the second you stop saying yes to everything, people begin to show you exactly where you stand in their lives. Not through words, through reactions. Some will adjust naturally. They'll respect your time, your space, your decisions. These are the people who value you beyond what you provide. But others will resist. Not loudly, not aggressively, but subtly. They'll question your change. They'll make you feel like you're being difficult. They'll remind you of how you used to be. And this is where most men fail. because they confuse discomfort with wrongdoing. They think, maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I should just let it go this one time. But boundaries don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because they're inconsistent. You set a limit once, and then you break it yourself the next time. And when that happens, people don't take your boundaries seriously because your behavior tells them everything they need to know. This is why consistency is more important than perfection. You don't need to get it right every time, but you do need to stand by your decisions when they matter. Now let's talk about something deeper: the emotional pressure that makes boundaries hard to maintain. It's not logic that breaks your boundaries, it's emotion, guilt, fear, the discomfort of disappointing someone. These feelings are powerful because they connect to something fundamental: your need to belong, your desire to be seen as a good person. And people, consciously or unconsciously, can use that against you. They don't need to argue. They don't need to force anything. They simply need to make you feel like you're letting them down. And if you're not aware of it, you'll fold. You'll give in, not because you want to, but because you want the discomfort to stop. But here's the truth that changes everything. Guilt does not always mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes, guilt simply means you've done something different, something unfamiliar, something that challenges the expectations others have of you. And when you understand that, you stop reacting to guilt automatically. You start questioning it. You ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong? Or am I just not doing what they wanted? That question creates space, and in that space, you regain control. Another powerful shift you need to make is learning to tolerate silence. Because when you set a boundary, the other person may not respond immediately. There may be a pause, a moment of tension, and many men rush to fill that silence. They soften their stance, they add explanations, they backtrack slightly just to ease the discomfort. But silence is not your enemy. Silence is where your boundary becomes real. It's where the other person processes the fact that something has changed. And if you can sit in that silence without reacting, you demonstrate something incredibly powerful: emotional control. Now, here's something most people won't tell you. You don't need everyone to agree with your boundaries. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. You only need alignment with yourself. Because the moment your boundaries depend on someone else's acceptance, they are no longer boundaries. They are requests, and requests can be denied. But boundaries? Boundaries are decisions, and decisions don't require permission. This is where your mindset must shift completely. You stop trying to be understood by everyone. You start focusing on being clear with yourself, because clarity removes hesitation. And hesitation is what people feel when they try to push your limits. When you hesitate, they see opportunity. When you're clear, they see a wall. And walls don't need to be aggressive to be effective. They just need to be firm. Because the strongest boundaries are not loud. They are unshakable. And once people realize they cannot move you easily, they stop trying. Or they leave. And either way, you win. Because your life becomes lighter, cleaner, more aligned. And for the first time, you start choosing your relationships instead of being chosen by whoever demands the most from you. There comes a point where setting boundaries is no longer about what you say, but about what you allow to continue. Because the truth is, words don't enforce boundaries. Behavior does. You can explain your limits perfectly. You can communicate clearly, calmly, and respectfully. But if your actions don't match your words, people will always follow what you do, not what you say. And this is where most men lose control without realizing it. They speak their boundaries, but they don't live them. They say they value their time, yet they keep agreeing to things that drain them. They say they don't tolerate disrespect, yet they continue engaging with it. They say they need space, yet they remain constantly available. And over time, people stop taking their words seriously. Not because they don't understand, but because they've learned something more important: that your limits can be pushed. Now here's the shift that changes everything. You stop trying to make people respect your boundaries, and you start showing them what happens when they don't. Not through anger, not through punishment, but through quiet, consistent action. If someone disrespects your time, you reduce your availability. If someone ignores your limits, you create distance. If someone repeatedly crosses a line, you step back from the connection. No long speeches, no emotional reactions, just change in behavior. Because consequences are what give boundaries their strength. And without consequences, boundaries are just suggestions. This is where emotional discipline becomes critical. Because enforcing a boundary often feels uncomfortable. It may feel like you're being cold. It may feel like you're overreacting. It may even feel like you're losing something important. But what you're actually doing is protecting something more valuable: your self-respect. And self-respect is built through action, not intention. Every time you follow through on a boundary, you reinforce a message inside yourself that your needs matter, that your time matters, that your energy is not something people can take without consideration, and that internal message changes how you show up in every interaction. Now let's talk about something even deeper: why some men struggle to enforce boundaries even when they understand them. It comes down to identity. If you see yourself as the nice guy, the one who always helps, always shows up, always keeps the peace, then setting boundaries feels like you're becoming someone else, someone colder, someone less likable. But here's the truth: being respected will take you further than being liked, because people often like those they can use, but they respect those they cannot control. And respect creates healthier, more balanced relationships. Now, this doesn't mean becoming distant or unkind. It means becoming selective. Selective with your time. Selective with your energy. Selective with who gets access to you. Because not everyone deserves the same level of access. And treating everyone the same is one of the fastest ways to drain yourself. Another powerful shift is learning to walk away without needing closure. This is difficult for many men. They want to explain. They want to be understood. They want the other person to recognize what went wrong. But here's the reality: not everyone will understand your boundaries. Not everyone will agree with them. And some people will only see your limits as obstacles to what they want. In those situations, explanation becomes useless. Because the issue is not a lack of understanding. It's a lack of alignment. And when there is no alignment, the only boundary that truly works is distance. Walking away is not weakness. It's clarity in action. It's recognizing that your energy is too valuable to be spent in places where it is not respected. And once you reach that level of clarity, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop proving your value. You stop chasing acceptance. Because you already understand something most people don't: that the right people will respect your boundaries without needing to be convinced. And the wrong people? They will remove themselves the moment they realize they can't control you anymore. And that is not a loss. That is freedom. At the highest level, boundaries stop being something you set and become something you embody. They are no longer reactions to other people's behavior. They become a standard that quietly shapes every decision you make. Because the truth is, the strongest boundaries are invisible. They don't need constant explanation. They don't need repeated reminders. They exist in how you carry yourself, how you respond, and what you consistently allow into your life. This is where everything comes together. You begin to realize that boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about filtering who gets to stay. And when you truly understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop fearing loss, because you understand that losing the wrong people is not a setback, it's alignment. Now here's the final piece most men never fully accept. Setting boundaries will cost you something. It may cost you approval. It may cost you attention. It may cost you certain relationships. But what it gives you in return is far greater: clarity, peace, self-respect. And those are things no one can take from you once you've built them properly. Because a man who has boundaries is no longer easy to pressure. He is no longer easy to guilt. He is no longer easy to manipulate. And that changes how the world interacts with him. People become more careful with how they treat him. They think twice before crossing lines. They recognize, even without words, that this is someone who values himself. And value commands respect. But here's where your discipline will be tested. Not when things are easy, but when emotions are involved. When you like someone. When you care about the connection. When you feel the pull to go back to old patterns just to keep things smooth. That's where most men break. Because they think, just this once won't matter. But it always matters. Because every time you break your own boundary, you weaken the foundation you've been trying to build. And every time you honor it, you strengthen it. So the question is never about the other person. It's always about you. Who are you choosing to be in that moment? The man who reacts, or the man who stands firm? The man who seeks approval, or the man who lives with self-respect? Because that choice defines everything. Now let me leave you with something deeper than advice. A simple equation. Clarity plus consistency equals respect. If you are clear about your limits and consistent in how you apply them, respect becomes inevitable. Not forced, not demanded, but earned through your behavior. And once you experience that level of respect, you will never go back to being the man who overextends, overexplains, and undervalues himself. Now I want you to be honest with yourself. Where in your life are you lacking clarity? And where are you being inconsistent with your own boundaries? Write your answer in the comments. Because awareness is the first step. But honesty is what turns awareness into change. If this shifted your perspective, press like so more men can learn what they were never taught. Subscribe for deeper psychological insights that sharpen your mindset and your relationships. And share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is finally decide where he stands.